It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call shots. Todd, I don't think... I'm going to be real with you. I don't think I've ever been more excited to record a Shots than I am right now to record this episode of Shots.
I'm just looking forward to talking about this movie with you, honestly.
Oh my God. So, before we get into this, if you've never listened to an episode of Shots before, which wouldn't surprise me because it's been a minute since we've done an episode of Shots.
Right.
Shots basically is our movie, TV kind of discussion side podcast where we kind of usually, especially in regards to movies, we will give a spoiler-free discussion and then we'll have a clear spoiler warning and then get into a kind of more unhinged discussion for that regards spoilers if you have seen the film. So, man, Into the Spider-Verse. I'm gonna let you go first. Let's get your spoiler-free thoughts.
Spoiler-free thoughts. Fuck. I'm just gonna be real. Like, that movie was fantastic. Like, it is a visually pleasing movie.
Oh yeah.
Like I was joking with when I first heard that Sony was trying to patent how they made that movie. I was like, ha. Right. But then after I'm watching it, I'm like, I get it.
I get it too. Yeah, visually it's fucking amazing. Like it looks unlike anything else.
Yeah.
There's nothing else that looks like that movie.
There's a lot of stuff I can talk about with that movie. Just I was wondering how they were gonna handle it. Is more of a Spider-Man movie than a Miles Morales movie.
Yeah, but
in a way.
I think the movie actually does a really good job of balancing that.
Yeah.
I don't want to beat around the bush here. This is probably my favorite superhero movie of all time.
I was wondering if it was going to be like that for you.
I'm going to have to see it again because it feels weird to say that, but when I walked out of the movie, that was really all that was in my head was I'm pretty sure that was just my favorite superhero movie of all time. I know for a fact already that it's the best Spider-Man movie.
I was trying to think about that, but I definitely ended up on that fence. I was like, all right, yeah, it's the best Spider-Man movie.
For me at least, it is objectively the best Spider-Man movie, and there, as we get further into this discussion, I'll explain more why, but without spoiling anything, the reason I think that is because I think that Into the Spider-Verse, more so than any other Spider-Man movie that's come before, and look, there have been great Spider-Man movies. I really like Homecoming, obviously the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. I even like the Amazing Spider-Man movies for what they are, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But this one is the first Spider-Man movie that overtly, the whole point, literally the last lines of the movie are in reference to the message that Stan Lee always tried to convey with Spider-Man. The fact that anybody can be under the mask.
Yep.
And that, to me, really, that message is permeated throughout this entire film. And to me, that makes it the best Spider-Man movie just on its own. Let alone the fact that this movie is the ultimate. I don't want to spoil anything yet, but the still staying spoiler free here, but the ultimate love letter to Spider-Man, with all of the references and nods. There are things in this movie where I actually couldn't believe that it was happening, and it has this breakneck pace. Dan made a very good comparison when he first saw the movie. He's like, this movie reminds me of Scott Pilgrim in a lot of ways, because the pace is so fast, and the visuals are so striking and stuff like that. And I definitely got that vibe. And surprise, surprise, Scott Pilgrim is another one of my favorite movies of all time. So, and I mean, the movie is almost perfect. I have very, very few complaints with the movie, just in general. I loved the way they handled everything. Mm-hmm. It's funny because, Miles Morales is a character. I've never I've always thought that the idea of Miles was always better than his execution.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially in the comics, like when Miles Morales first sort of came around in the comics, his first run it's very like mediocre, for lack of a better word. Just like, I always liked the design and the idea of the character, but again, the execution never really did anything for me. A lot of people really, I think, kind of gave it a pass because of, you know, the fact that he was really kind of he was a step in the right direction for Marvel in terms of like having like mixed race superheroes and stuff like that, which is great and everything. But the things that they were actually doing with the character in the comics never really did much for me. And even like Spider-Man PS4, like, I liked Miles in that game, but it didn't really like. I've never really been sold on Miles as a character until this movie.
Yeah.
Like, this movie is the movie that made me really fall in love with Miles as a character. Where I was like, okay, wow, like, I really like Miles Morales as a dude. And I think that the movie does a really good job of balancing the Miles stuff in particular and the, you know, this is a movie where there are like, what, 4 or 5 other Spider-Men?
It's like 5. I think it's 5.
Yeah. And like, they don't overshadow Miles at all.
Yeah.
And that's very impressive. That could have easily happened. Like, they are not a main selling point of this movie at all. In fact, if anything, they're a little bit pushed to the back.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because you watch the trailers for this and you assume that it's just going to be sort of a fun, visually appealing romp with all these different Spider-Men, and it is, but the movie has so much more heart than that, and the movie tells a good story with like compelling characters, and like even the villain, right? Like even the villain doesn't overshadow the overall point. I really love the way that was handled. I you know, again, I'm beating around the bush here because I don't want to get into spoilers, but you know, they've got Kingpin in this movie, and Kingpin, you know, and Kingpin, I feel like he's a little bit of a one-note character. They kind of do the same things with Kingpin throughout all these different. A Kingpin story is a Kingpin-ass story, right?
Yeah.
But his motivations are relatable, but they don't overshadow the plot.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of understand his point of view, but they don't get in the way of anything. Nothing. This movie is so deft in its execution. Nothing gets in the way of anything it's doing. It's perfect. My complaints with it are so minuscule. They're like almost not even worth bringing up at all. And I fucking love it, man. I love it. Like, I could sit here and just gush for forever about this movie. And I need to see it again, but like my initial reaction is I have not been. I think the last time I was like straight up blown away by a movie like this was like Mad Max Fury Road.
Okay.
Like, I remember my feeling when I first walked out of Mad Max Fury Road and just saying like, holy fuck, like that was one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was like when I saw it in theaters. I was like, yeah, it's
and that's how I felt walking out of this. I was like, Jesus Christ, like that was amazing, you know?
Yep.
And I've always loved Spider-Man. Like, I've always been a Spider-Man fan, you know? I love Spider-Man as a character, but weirdly enough, I think this is the movie that made me really realize the depths to which I love Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, this was really the movie where I was like, oh wow, like, I love Spider-Man. You know? To the same extent that I've always, like, you know, I'm a big DC guy. I've always loved like Batman and stuff like that, and even Superman to some extent. And I think that this was the movie that made me realize just how much I love Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm trying to remain spoiler free here as best as possible. It's hard because I think there's a lot of like spoilerific stuff in this movie. I think there's a lot to spoil.
Yeah, that's honestly why I'm like kind of like just trying to stay quiet, because I know it's gonna be harder for me to stay spoiler free.
Yeah, but you know, I guess we can move into spoilers here pretty soon. I just want to reiterate like how much this means to me as a fan of Spider-Man, and how much this movie means as a fan of comic books. I mean, like, this is first and foremost like a comic book movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this movie loves being a comic book movie specifically. It isn't just a superhero movie. It is a movie about comics.
Yeah.
To the point where it opens up with the fucking CCA logo. Like, that's so cool, you know? And like, you know, and like the colors, the colors don't stay exactly inside of the lines just like the old comics used to.
Yep.
Like, the way it looks, the dot work and the hatch work with some of the character designs, like, it just looks, you know, visually it looks like a comic book.
That's actually, I got into a discussion with a coworker of mine. I was telling him, like, it was watching a comic book. It's fantastic.
Yeah, beyond the obvious stuff, right? Because they do the work with, like, the word bubbles.
Yeah, all the word bubbles and shit, and even just if you actually just pay attention to the stuff you're saying. So
yeah, the panels and stuff like that. But it's the little things where I'm like, wow, this really does look and feel like a comic book movie. And man, like, there are just things. There are things in this movie. I love the characterization of all the different Spider-Men, even though there are some that, you know, Spider-Ham is basically comic relief, right?
Of course.
And John Mulaney, oh my god, he's so great as Spider-Ham. But they did, I think, a good job with, like, with the characterization of the Spider-Men, and they actually did way more with them than I expected without making them the center of attention.
Yeah.
And the way that they sort of, like, they enhance Miles as a character. They don't take anything away from him. They enhance. And man, I feel like I'm all over the place, but I really, really love this movie. I really, really love this movie a lot. I can't wait to see it again. I think, like, it's hard for me to make time to go to the movies, and I, like, all I'm thinking about is just going and watching it again. And making time to go watch it again. And the soundtrack? Can we just talk about the soundtrack
dude,
for a second?
Here's the thing. I think I told you that. I'm like, dude, the soundtrack is awesome.
It's so fucking good. I've been listening to it nonstop on Spotify. Like, ever since I left the theater, I'm like, fuck, this movie's good. The soundtrack, and you know, I was talking about this before. Let's just have one quick little discussion before we move into spoiler territory, because I think this is an interesting discussion to have. And, you know, you and I, privileged white males, you know, blah blah blah, I get that. Why is it, do you think, that this movie is not being lauded in the same way that Black Panther was?
I don't know.
I mean, there are a few reasons, right? I think, but you know, it's funny to me, this movie does so many things with exemplifying black culture, and, you know, Miles Morales, of course, being a mixed race protagonist and stuff like that. I feel like this movie should be held on the same pedestal that Black Panther is. And of course, Black Panther has the whole, you know, Black Panther's thing is about it. You know, it obviously exemplifies African culture specifically, which isn't given the spotlight in media. And this movie doesn't do that, but I think it does show a lot of, I think it does a lot of subtle things to talk about race and to talk about black culture and stuff like that. And it's not heavy-handed with it, though. Like, you don't have to, the movie is not heavy-handed with peppering that stuff in, but it is in there a little bit. And I mean, Miles' dad is a black cop, and his uncle, obviously, if you read the comics, is a criminal and stuff like that. And there's some interesting back and forth there, and you can read the subtext between what it's like to be a black cop with a criminal uncle and stuff like that. There's some subtext that you can read between the lines there, and I think that, and there's stuff with Miles. You know, he's a graffiti artist and stuff, and I just think there are culturally significant things that I'm surprised more people aren't latching onto. And I was talking to Dan about this, and he made the point that the easy answer is just that it's because it's a cartoon.
That is the easy answer, and it's honestly probably why.
And that's the sad thing. I feel like people aren't going to take this movie seriously because it's an animated movie. And this movie deserves to be taken more seriously, and, like, sadly, the movie is not lighting up the box office at all.
It's a damn shame because it's just like, I think we have like recorded evidence of both of our opinions of Black Panther. It's like this movie's so much better.
Oh, this movie is way better than Black Panther. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've really enjoyed Black Panther, but this movie is much, much better. I appreciate what Black Panther is culturally and stuff like that. And I'm glad that Black Panther exists. Don't get me wrong, but
on a pure like just how good is the movie?
Yeah,
and Spider-Verse is like next fucking level.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and it does make me sad though. I think that's an interesting conversation of like. People not being able to take this as seriously as something like a Black Panther just because it isn't a live action sort of representation of the character.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I mean, I'm curious. I can't wait to show this movie to my parents because I'm curious what they're going to think about it. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm curious what an older generation thinks about this movie. People who don't normally watch animated movies and stuff like that.
That's the thing that's like, I don't even like think about like what people think. Like it's like, I'll watch an animated like movie all day. Like I don't give a shit because like this is shit I kind of grew up with. Damn, is it wrong? I kind of want to make this like a topic for the main show.
Well, like animated movies versus live
animated
action?
movies versus like live action and like why they aren't as taken as serious. Honestly.
Yeah, no, for me personally, like I in many ways prefer animated movies.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting thing I think to talk about. And I think this movie is just as good as anything on the live action screen, if not better. It was pretty much immediately. I'm so glad that I'm ending this year on a cinematic high note. I quite literally, I'm just like, man, like I saw my favorite movie of the year basically right at the ass end of the year.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into spoiler territory. I'm gonna clear spoiler break. It's been spoiler free until this point. We're gonna start talking about spoilers now. Turn back if you've not seen the movie. Go watch it. I think Todd and I are both giving you our ringing endorsements. Go rush to the theater and go watch this movie and come back and listen to the rest of this podcast. So yeah, spoiler warning from here on out. Man, can we talk for a second about how every frame of this movie from the first, again, it opens with that CCA logo, the post-credit scene, I was in fucking disbelief.
Dude, I swear I did not see that coming. Here's the deal. I knew what was going to happen. I knew they were going to show Miguel.
Okay. Like you read about that or something?
I knew that. I knew that was a thing, but I didn't know how they were going to show him.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were going to do that shit.
Yeah, I mean, like, I wasn't surprised to see them work Spider-Man 2099 into it. That's an obvious thing. He's 2099's like a fan favorite and stuff like that. So I was not surprised to see him pop up. But, like, man, they faithfully recreated scenes from like the 60s Spider-Man show.
It's so good.
It's so fucking good. I'm like, and then like I didn't want to spoil this earlier because it took me aback so much that I like laughed audibly out loud in the theater at it hard. But when they straight up make fun of Spider-Man 3 like early in the movie.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, it's so good. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, dude.
And like there's references to like Ben Reilly. There's oh my god, there's so much fan service here. Like everything about it is so fucking good. Yeah, no, they just everything about I love the way, and again, this is another thing I didn't really want to talk about cuz I think there's a lot of little things that you can spoil without trying to. Like talking about Peter Parker in this movie. Like so good. Not even just both really versions of Peter Parker. Like not even just the one that we get more time with in the movie, but like the one at the beginning also is like is just that perfect representation of Peter Parker and sort of like the message that he conveys to Miles and how he was just willing to be the perfect teacher and stuff like that. And he I was actually kind of surprised they like straight up killed him off.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. You know what? I actually saw that coming because like I was like, why was Miles going to be at a grave in the trailers? I saw the trailer.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And it was just like, what? Why else would he be in one? So it's like,
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I thought he was gonna. I thought they were gonna kill the dad.
Ooh.
I thought that they were gonna go that route. I was like, oh, they're gonna kill the shit out of the dad.
You know, but you know what? I kind of like that they didn't, and that's actually someone I love the way that they showed the relationship between Miles and his uncle.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that was actually one of the things I do love is they kind of had the same theme going on, the like soundtrack wise,
right?
And
right.
I love that. Fuck that shit. God, I can just gush about this movie.
It's funny because like my wife asked me, she's like, oh, did you see it coming that that his uncle was going to be the Prowler? And
yeah,
of course I did because I know that Aaron Davis.
That's something I love about like people that don't know that shit. You know?
Oh, it was it was like a super effective twist for her, right?
Yeah. Like that's the thing. I respect, like newbies to the fandom and shit like that to like not know about any of that crap.
Yeah, it was like a great twist for her, and of course, I know it, from the comics, I know Aaron Davis is the Prowler and stuff. But what is great about this movie is that could have been a misstep for me. That could have been like like they didn't really play that well. But the fact that they sell you so easily on Miles's relationship with him. Mm-hmm. Makes that scene really makes that scene work, and really, I mean, think about it. They sell Miles and his uncle Aaron. Their relationship is you completely buy it, and they really only have one scene together.
Yeah, it's one fucking scene, and it's other than the later scene where he actually dies. But
yeah, the movie is so economical with its storytelling.
It's funny. They made him his Uncle Ben.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they totally did, and like even Nick Cage Spider-Man Noir is like, wow, that's a good backstory.
shout out to Nicolas Cage.
Oh, he was so good. The Rubik's Cube bit was so good.
Oh.
And I love how if you watch in the credits, like he thinks he like solved the Rubik's Cube, and his whole world thinks that he solved the Rubik's Cube because they all see it in black and white, and he has it on like a pedestal, but it's clearly not solved at all. It's such a good bit. Oh man,
I didn't realize I was going to enjoy Nicolas Cage that much in this movie, but he's great.
Perfectly cast.
Yeah.
Again, John Mulaney is like perfect, and it's so funny because it's like even like the weird characters, like they brought in that weird Spider-Verse character like Penny Parker, like the anime kind of girl, and even that worked for me, and I didn't really think it would. I thought
I enjoyed the really anime heavy scenes with her though. Like that shit was fucking love.
It's funny because, like, even reading that, like, that didn't really, stylistically, I always liked it, even reading, like, the Spider-Verse comics that they did several years ago where that character is introduced. That character actually invented by Gerard Way of My Chemical Romance. I don't know if you...
all right, then.
I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, that comic was actually written by him. That character is created by him. And, it was so weird, like, to see that on screen and for it to actually work. But Gwen's portrayal in this movie too, so good, so perfect. And it's funny, I didn't see the fact that she was already from another universe. I did not see that coming. Like she was already from another universe, but she was sent back into the past.
Yeah, like a week.
Like a week in the past.
Last week, yeah.
I didn't see that coming. I thought that when Spider-Gwen popped up, it was just going to be another version of Gwen Stacy.
That's the thing. There's always only one Spider-Man.
Yeah, so I just thought that like that was gonna. I just thought there was basically gonna be two Gwen Stacys until it got to the moment where he actually like kind of rips off her hair on accident and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's how that happens,
Yep.
And apparently the sequel is gonna be very Gwen Stacy heavy from what they've said. So I'm very excited about that. And they sort of tease that at the very end of the movie anyway. when
Yeah,
Miles
they
is
did.
Miles is
Yeah.
laying in bed, and you know Gwen is actually able to sort of communicate
Yeah.
with him.
Yeah, you got a minute or whatever.
Yeah.
Or some shit. Yeah.
So
I get it. Like that, the scene when he finally gets his suit
yes,
is so good. That shit is so good, and it's when his comic gets added to the pile, like his origin
Right.
stories. Like that's the origin, you know.
right.
I was like, fuck.
I love that stuff, and I love the graffiti spider symbol. I love that.
Yep.
I really hope they keep that. I hope they don't kind of class up his suit in the sequel. I hope they keep it exactly
I kind
the
of like
same.
that I kind of like that he just grabbed an old suit and just fucking spray painted it. I love it.
Yeah, I love that so much. I love the way I love the way Aunt May is in this movie, where she's sort of like she was totally in on it like the whole time, and she's almost like Peter Parker's Alfred more than anything in this movie.
I actually loved the interaction between Aunt May and the older Peter Parker, Peter B. Parker.
Yeah, yeah.
That was great, and just that bit of him being fat was good shit.
Yeah, every time let me ask you this. Did you see the Olivia Octavius thing coming?
That okay. That I did.
That took me totally off guard.
I was like, what?
Now they've done, and I actually asked Dan about this because even I was not privy to this, and Dan, the ultimate Marvel Spider-Man fan, so I had to ask him about this. I was like, has this been done in the comics before? Because to my knowledge, I couldn't recall a female Doc Ock like that, and he's like,
So
yeah,
has it been done?
It has been done. Olivia Octavia, like that's been a thing before, and blah blah blah.
Yeah, that was completely new to me. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, that was a completely new concept to me. So and it's funny because they show her a little bit earlier in the movie, like when Miles comes into his classroom.
And I don't remember if they said her name,
but they
though.
never said her name, I don't think.
Yeah. See, that's the thing, is if they said her name, I would have been like, oh shit.
And like they play that scene so perfectly because she's like, yeah, your body is going to be torn apart and completely disintegrate, and I'm gonna love watching every minute and shit like that. And then the arms just come out, and I was like, wait,
Yep.
what?
No, you're just like, oh shit, what?
Holy shit. and I just like, it was such a cool take on the character too. Like I was so shocked by that. Now,
Yeah.
I've got two minor complaints. My first minor complaint is that there is 100% no reason for Scorpion to be in this movie.
Yeah, that was weird.
Like, why? Why is he in this movie whatsoever?
Other than get his ass whooped by a spider.
Yeah, there's no purpose. He has no reason. I honestly think, like, yeah, Green Goblin's in there for that first little bit, right? And that was fine for me.
I don't know. It's like, did they throw the villains randomly in just to like kind of like even shit out, basically?
I mean, maybe, but I feel like you could have done. I honestly, for me, I think that it would have been enough. And of course, one of them gets killed off with Prowler getting shot by Kingpin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it would have been enough to just have like Octavius and Kingpin and Prowler and a sort of core group.
Yeah, I would have been personally fine with that because like Scorpion was kind of, I was like, whatever.
I mean, like the take on Scorpion was cool.
Yeah.
It was a cool take on the character, but he was just sort of there. There was no real reason for him to be there.
Yeah, there was like no like characterization of him. Like he was just kind of, he just existed.
Yeah, other than what you said, I think that character was probably solely in there just for there to be more cannon fodder for the big fight at the end. And that's fine. And like and my other very minor complaint, I love the song Sunflower, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't like that they sort of worked it into the movie. Like,
oh, when he sings it?
Well, when he sings it in the beginning,
it exists completely.
Well, yeah, like when he sings it in the beginning, that's totally fine. But then like later on, like when he's when Peter Parker's trying to teach him to relax his fingers, and he's like, "Oh, what calms you down?" He starts singing Sunflower. That annoyed me. Like that sort of took me out of it a little bit.
It didn't bother me.
And like, well, yeah, and maybe it's just me because like I don't like it when there's like overt product placement like that. And he's sitting there in the beginning with his Sony headphones on and shit like that.
Yeah. Oh well, this is a Sony film. You gotta get ready for that.
You got to have stuff like that, and that doesn't really bother me. It's not like to those Space Jam levels where it's like, all right, Mike, lace up your Nikes and we'll go get you a Big Mac. It's not to that level of terrible product placement. But it did just ever so briefly take me out of it to where it sort of dates the movie. You know what I mean? Like when unnecessarily, I think sort of dates the movie. Where I'm gonna show, if I show this to my kids in like 20 years, they'll be like, "What the hell is why is this song? Was this like the #1 song back then?" And it's not, So I don't know. It sort of was a little bit needless to me, and I do like the fact that music is what calms them down and stuff like that. But I actually think, and it was funny, Xanastasia and I actually had like a mini argument about this.
Oh, what?
Because
really?
we got into a discussion about it because she likes the fact that Sunflower was almost used as like a plot device and whatever. And I was like, why didn't they just make it so that he had like, if music is what calms him down, which by the way is never referenced again later. If that was his whole thing, like, oh, music is what calms me down and that's how I control my powers or whatever, that's never brought up again. Like, ever.
Would it have been more interesting for him to have like an MP3 player?
Right. I think that they could have put some wireless earbuds on him and maybe done kind of given him that angle where it's like, okay, whenever I need to relax or calm down, music is what does it for me. And so he's got, when he goes out and he's got the spider suit on, he's got earbuds in or whatever.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I agree with you on that.
If it were me writing this movie, that's something that I would have put in. I'm not trying to be pretentious saying that I'm a better writer than these guys. I'm not at all. This movie is brilliantly written. But that was just a minor complaint that I had. Very, very small. Again, barely even worth mentioning. My complaints are so small. This movie is so close to being perfect. It's like out of 10, it's like a 9.99999. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's some real shit.
But it was so good. Let me just, speaking of brilliant writing, the scene with the dad talking to him through the door.
Yes.
And he's tied up and like got the webbing on his mouth, so he literally can't talk back to him.
Yeah.
Is so fucking good. That is such a brilliantly written scene. Like that, you could not have written a better scene than that. That was so perfect. I was like, man. And then can we talk about for a second that this movie got me to cry twice because it has probably my favorite Stan Lee cameo ever.
Yeah.
It was like the perfect Stan Lee cameo.
Yeah, I won't even lie, that shit fucked me up.
And then they have that little message at the end with Stan's glasses and everything, and
yep.
And this was, I mean, look, the reality sets in that this is the first Marvel movie that I've watched after his passing. And I'm kind of glad that it is, because it gave me a weird sense of closure in a way, because like this movie is the perfect representation of Stan's message. And that's what I said at the top. That's why I love this movie so much. Into the Spider-Verse is the perfect representation of the things that Stan has been saying since he started writing comic books. The message that he's always conveyed is that everybody can be a hero. Everybody can be a hero. Like it can be you under the mask. And I love that. And that's what the like underlying themes of this movie is. And like I can't get over how brilliantly that was done.
Yeah. One of my other favorite moments, it's a leap of faith.
Yes.
Like, I love that shit.
These stuff with Peter B. Parker was so good. Like the fact that he had his underlying characterization, he learned just as much from Miles.
Yep.
And the things that he carried back in his own universe. And I mean, he's to the point where he's basically, when he comes into this, he's essentially suicidal.
Yeah. He's kind of like whatever about the whole thing.
He's kind of whatever about his entire existence. And like this whole experience gives him a new lease on life and makes him realize that, oh, there are leaps of faith worth taking, and you know, and he has that moment at the end where he's like, I'm so proud of you. Wait, do I want kids? You know. It's so good, man. Everything is so fucking good. Oh, and shout out to the fact, and my wife and I were talking about this. I just want to like shout out to the fact that they never made, you know, Miles had the whole crush on Gwen Stacy and everything like that, but they made the decision for her to not be a love interest.
Oh yeah, friends.
Yeah, and I love that, and I love that, and more so than that, I love that they made it Miles to say that, because it wasn't like, oh, that bitch friend zoned him. It wasn't that at all. It wasn't that at all. They gave Miles the opportunity to be like, hey, like, let's establish this. We're just friends, right?
Yeah.
I love that. This movie made the right decision at basically every turn.
I'll say this, like the entire time I was watching this movie, I was like, I had like just a smile on my face for the most part. Like,
so
I was just
good.
Like, God. So
good. It's the perfect superhero movie. It's the perfect Spider-Man movie. It's the perfect comic book movie. Like, it's so weird. And I think I talked about this maybe on the main show. I feel like I talked about this recently. It's so weird to like experience an instant classic while you're experiencing it. Because like walking out of that movie, I'm like, I'm pretty sure what just happened to me was I just watched my favorite superhero movie. That's a weird thing. You talked about
that on the main show.
I don't know.
That might have been Relapse. That might have been actually the most recent Relapse.
I don't know. Everything runs together for me. My podcasting is my life. What do I say in real life and what I say in podcasting is one and the same. But it's just you don't realize you're watching an instant classic until you're sitting there, and it just, when everything hit me and it was all said and done, I was like, shit, like, I can't think of a superhero movie that so thoroughly floored me. And I already came in with high expectations. Because like you were telling me it was really good. Dan was telling me it was really good. It has like a fucking like 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. You know, there's like 3 sorry fuckers out there that say they don't like this movie. They're probably lying.
I would love to see the complaints that somebody has.
Yeah, like, and it's, and I've talked to people who say that the visuals were like too much for them and stuff like that.
Oh, I mean, see, that's personal shit.
Yeah, well, to me that's understandable. Like that kind of stuff is not going to be for everybody, but like I really do think that I think there's a hump that a lot of people are going to have to get over if they don't like cartoons or animated movies or whatever. But this just stands at the top, I think, of superhero movies, and I loved it, man. I cannot get over how good this movie was. It's all I've been thinking about since I walked out of the theater yesterday. Like, it's so fucking good.
You want to know how I knew you were excited to record this shit? Because it's been a little minute since we talked. It's like the moment I messaged you that we could record, he's like, fuck yeah. I was like, all right.
You're like, let's go ahead and record. I'm like, I've been anxious. I've been actually trying. I was hoping that we were going to be able to record earlier today, because I was like, man, I'm so jazzed to talk about this movie, man. Like,
yeah,
I've been like vibrating with hype to talk about this movie. It's so fucking good. I honestly, it's just one of those things where like I can't wait for this to come out on Blu-ray so I can just watch it again and again and again. Yep. Like, it's going to be one of those movies that I just turn on. Like, it's going to be it's timeless. It's going to be a totally timeless.
It's going to be one of those movies that I'll probably rewatch almost every year type of thing.
Right.
Because it's just like, it's just that damn good.
I loved it, man. I loved it. You know, it's funny. Can we shout out the Kingpin design in this movie?
Oh my god, that shit killed me.
He's just like this giant just wall of flesh with like a tiny little head. But I love the portrayal of Kingpin though. Like I of course there's
like the reason for him doing all this is relatable. You know, he wants his family back and all that shit. But he's still a monster about doing it. Straight kills the Peter Parker of Miles' universe like nothing.
He's a monster, and he doesn't even realize he's a monster. And he doesn't think of himself as a monster until he sees himself through his wife and son's eyes. Yeah. And when his wife and son essentially, you know, his wife and son witness him, you know, almost, I think he actually had Spider-Man about to kill him, right?
Yeah.
And they sort of see him doing it, and then they take off and get into a car accident, right?
Yep.
And so now the whole reason for him trying to open parallel universes is because he wants to access a parallel universe where he can get another version of his wife and son.
But what's funny about that is, like, what, is he taking a wife and son from another Kingpin?
I guess so, but he's so self-centered, he probably doesn't care.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just funny because he doesn't even realize he is as vile as he is, and I think that's what makes Kingpin as a character kind of fascinating. And all of these things that we're mentioning are set in subtext. They never overtake the movie. Like the movie trusts you as a viewer enough to let you figure a lot of this stuff out on your own without having to beat you over the head with it.
You know, that's going to be a problem for people that just can't read subtext. But,
well, I think that reading between the lines is a very hard thing to do, especially as a writer. Like, to integrating subtext into a movie and sort of just like letting your audience like just get it and figure it out on their own is very tricky to kind of nail in the way that this movie nails it.
yeah.
And I think that a lot of people will probably take stuff away from this movie without even realizing they're taking it away from it, you know? And I think that's just paramount. I think it's paramount to the strength of this movie's writing. It's all so good. Everything about this movie was fucking nailed.
Mm-hmm.
It is very, very nearly just a perfect movie. And it's like, again, I want to go back and see it again, but as it stands right now, I'm just like, shit. Favorite superhero movie, favorite comic book movie, favorite Spider-Man movie, one of my favorite movies ever. Like, it's so good. Anyway, I could probably go on for another hour about this, but I feel like we should probably wrap it up.
I do just want to shout out one last scene. It's the last scene between Miles and his dad as he is Spider-Man at that time. Is just the fucking voice that Miles does.
Yeah.
Holy
I'm looking forward to working with you. I love you.
And he even hugs him and shit. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I was 100%, especially after that scene I was talking about earlier where Miles couldn't talk back. I was like, oh, they're killing this dad. This daddy gonna die.
I'm happy they didn't do it.
And they didn't go that route. I was, again, every moment, every decision that they had, like, okay, we could have made Gwen Stacy love interest. They didn't. We could have killed the dad. They didn't, right? They made the right choice at every turn.
Yeah, I think it was definitely the right choice for his uncle to be the one to actually die.
Yeah.
Like, that, like, because here's the thing. At the time, you know, he didn't really have not really, I'm not going to say a bad relationship with his father, but a strained relationship with his father.
Well, he didn't see his father's way of seeing things until he actually became Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right? And then he could sort of see his father's perspective on things. And when he was actually forced to just listen to his dad, not talk back, not write him off, to actually sit there and listen. Again, it's brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I can't say enough good things about this movie. Anyway, let's wrap this up, Todd. You got anything else you want to add?
No, that's it.
Thanks for listening, guys. Support this movie. When this comes out on Blu-ray, buy 17 copies or something. I just want this movie to do well. Like, it breaks my heart to see that this movie isn't doing well at the box office because it deserves so much more. So I just, you know, it's one of those movies where I when this comes out on Blu-ray, I'm like, I want to buy myself a copy. I want to buy like my parents a copy. It's so good. Such a special movie. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
See ya.
Hey there, thanks for checking out another fantastic Nerd Bourbon video. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, be sure to go ahead and subscribe, leave us a like, drop us a nice comment, or I guess a mean one if that's your prerogative. But until next time, get dunked on.